Okay, so we've had a bit of a discussion going on ticket scalping, and what I wanted to do was just provide you with a few insights into the economics of ticket scalping. And to do that, I'm using the diagram in front of you. So we've got a linear demand curve and a fixed supply curve. The supply curve is vertical. Now, the reason I've drawn the vertical supply curve is that if you think of the type of events that most ticket scalpers operate at, we're talking things like sporting events, music concerts, those sorts of events. The capacity of those venues is actually fixed. So what I've drawn here is the AFL Grand Final at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, the MCG, and that venue has a capacity of around about 100,000 seats. So there's no point in ticket scalpers actually trying to scalp at events where the supply is or the supply can easily be increased, because that could quite easily put them out of business if event organisers unexpectedly increase the actual supply. So they really need a fixed supply to be able to operate. So the supply curve is vertical for that reason. I've drawn the demand curve downward sloping, and the thing that you need to note about the demand curve is, in this case, the demand curve is made up of individual people. So I've drawn four people here: person A, person B, person X, and person Y. And so what I'm assuming is that the demand curve is made up of the willingness to pay for these tickets to the grand final of each of these, of each of the 170,000 people along the demand curve. So if you have a look along the horizontal axis, the demand curve stops at around about 170,000 people. So what I've literally got on this demand curve is the maximum willingness to pay of 170,000 people. Now, is the relationship between the willingness to pay and the quantity linear? So is the demand curve actually linear in reality? Probably not. It's probably highly non-linear, but that doesn't matter. I'm just assuming it's linear for simplicity, because we're trying to get some simple concepts across here. So I've got the willingness to pay. So let's just explore that a little bit more. Person B is roughly person 100 and say 35,000. And that person has a willingness to pay for a ticket of around about looks like about $190, maybe $200 from the vertical axis. Now, the other thing I'm assuming here is that all seats are the same. I know in reality they're not the same. You've got some seats have better views than others, but I'm assuming that all seats are the same, just for simplicity. Person A, that person is roughly person 120,000. So person A, in terms of the market for these tickets, person A has the 120,000th highest willingness to pay. Hopefully that makes sense. Person Y has a much higher willingness to pay. Looks like around about $700-800. Person X has a higher willingness to pay again. So this demand curve does represent the willingness to pay of consumers who are chasing these AFL Grand Final tickets. Okay, now first of all, we know that ticket scalpers set a price well below equilibrium. So how do we know that the price is actually below equilibrium? Well, let's just imagine we are thinking about the AFL Grand Final for this coming year. We know the capacity is 100,000. The question I've got for you is, if tickets are sold at $150 a piece for these 100,000 identical seats, how long will it take for those tickets to actually sell out? I've never actually chased tickets myself for an AFL Grand Final, but I'm guessing all of the tickets sell out in a matter of hours. So then the second question, the main question here then, is if we could magically increase the size of the stadium up to, say, 120,000, could we sell those additional 20,000 tickets at the current market price of $150? Hopefully you'll agree with me that the answer is probably yes, and if we had an extra 20,000 seats magically appear, it would probably take half an hour or an hour to sell those tickets. they would go very, very quickly. So the fact that we can sell extra supply if it were to be available, although it's not, really does mean that this market does have significant excess demand, which means the price is well below the equilibrium level. And this is great for scalpers. They want to be able to operate in this environment where there is guaranteed excess demand. Now, the next question is, why do the event organisers price tickets at such a low level for events such as this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, they want to set a very low price so that everyone has an equal opportunity, regardless of their income level, to actually attend the event. They don't want to set a price of $500 at equilibrium and really eliminate a certain socio-economic group from attending the grand final. They want to give everyone, regardless of income level, an equal opportunity to attend. At the same time, they do need to set, some reasonable price that covers their costs, but the price isn't too high. Next reason is that by setting a price of $150, they're guaranteed to sell out the event. If they started playing around with a price of close to $500, they might get it wrong, and they might actually set a price which is above equilibrium accidentally, because they don't know where equilibrium is in reality. So if they start setting prices really high up around $500 per ticket, that actually may be too high. Then they will have a problem that they won't sell all of the tickets. Then the only option to them will be to have a stadium which is, say, 70 or 80% full, or to lower the price to sell the additional tickets, in which case presumably you'd have to give a refund to the people who already have tickets, which is not good. So another reason is to guarantee a sellout, because you don't really know where the demand curve lies. And by guaranteeing a sellout, you can actually maximize your advertising revenue, because the advertisers who will participate in the grand final are guaranteed of 100,000 people viewing their advertisements. It also guarantees maximum food and drink sales at the event, and also merchandise sales as well. The people who are supplying food and drink and merchandise have a guaranteed market of 100,000 potential customers. Okay, so there are some very good reasons why price is set below equilibrium. However, when scalpers enter the market, things get a little bit ugly. A lot of people do openly criticise scalpers, saying that they are ripping customers off. Do I agree with that? Is it a rip-off? To some extent it is, but I want to focus on another element of the whole scalping process. That is, scalpers provide a very valuable service to consumers. That is, scalpers actually help redistribute the tickets to those who value them the most. Now, we have the willingness to pay along the demand curve, and what I'm going to say is that the more you're willing to pay, the more you value the tickets. So if you are willing to pay more, you value the tickets more, therefore tickets should be going to you rather than people who value them less or are willing to pay less. Now, the one problem associated with that type of logic is that willingness to pay can actually be related to income levels. But keeping that in mind, we'll continue on with this line of argument. What scalpers do is they actually grab 10, 20, 30 tickets. And let's just assume that a scalper for this particular event buys up 2 tickets. And that scalper actually prevents person A and B from attending the event. Without the scalper, A and B would have got those last 2 tickets. With the scalper, A and B miss out. So what the scalper does is they prevent people A and B from attending the event. Now, those 2 people, A and B, have a very low willingness to pay, and therefore a very low value of attending the event relative to the 2 people X and Y. And so then what the scalper does is they sell the tickets to these two people with a higher willingness to pay X and Y. So what the scalper's actually doing is, to some extent, taking tickets off people who are willing to pay lesser amounts and redistributing those tickets to people who are willing to pay higher values for those tickets. Now, once again, these two people, X and Y, could actually be willing to pay more than A and B because they just love football more, or it could be because they just have higher income levels. They could just be considerably wealthier than the two people A and B. Have a good think about that. Both cases are possible, but hopefully if the market is to operate, or if scalpers are to actually improve the efficiency of the market outcome, then X and Y are people who simply value attending the event more. Okay, so what these scalpers then are doing is helping the market achieve a more efficient outcome. If the price was at equilibrium of 500, then the tickets would go to the 100,000 people willing to pay the most. That is, the people on the demand curve to the left of the supply curve. But we know the price of 500 is too high. The AFL Commission wants these tickets to be available to everyone, so the price is set at 150. What scalpers then do is buy up some of the tickets and presumably displace some people on the middle and lower parts of the demand curve, and probably on the upper parts as well. They get in line before some of these people, and the scalpers do redistribute the tickets to the people high up on the demand curve. So through the action of scalpers, we get this redistribution of tickets to people who are willing to pay the most. Now, to some extent, that is an improvement in the allocation of the tickets. So to some extent, the scalpers are actually helping the market improve its, or the scalpers are actually improving the allocation of the tickets.